The German U-boat U-571's periscope was scanning the North Atlantic convoy when Seaman First Class Henry Bubbles McKenna realized his grandmother's Irish laundry soap was either going to expose the most elusive submarine in the entire Kriegsmarine, or get every man aboard USS Blackwood killed by Captain Lieutenant Wolfgang Ghost Walker Mueller's legendary underwater predator. The only U-boat that had never been detected during 18 months of Wolfpack warfare that had sent 47 Allied vessels to the bottom without a single confirmed sighting. Bubbles, something's moving down there. Gunner's mate Second Class Patrick Lucky O'Malley whispered from his depth charge station as the German submarine crept through the dark waters beneath the Allied convoy, where Mueller's U-571 had been systematically hunting merchant shipping with stealth techniques that had sunk 47 vessels without ever being spotted by Allied detection equipment or leaving survivors who could describe the submarine's appearance or tactical methods. The tactical situation was impossible by every anti-submarine standard that mattered in convoy warfare, because Mueller's Type VIIC U-boat represented the pinnacle of German underwater engineering and could remain submerged for 20 hours while approaching targets using silent running techniques that defeated Allied sonar systems through acoustic camouflage that made the submarine virtually invisible to conventional detection methods during underwater stalking operations in the North Atlantic. Shipping lanes. USS Blackwood was a Buckley-class destroyer escort equipped with the most advanced sonar equipment available to the U.S. Navy, but U-571 had been specifically modified with experimental acoustic dampening materials that absorbed sonar pulses and reduced engine noise to levels below the threshold of Allied detection systems, creating a technological advantage that allowed Mueller's submarine to operate in heavily defended convoy routes where other German U-boats were immediately detected and destroyed. But what the legendary German submarine commander didn't know was that Henry McKenna had grown up in his Irish grandmother's boarding house in Boston's South Shore, where old Bridget McKenna had taught him that the right soap could reveal things that wanted to stay hidden. And sometimes the best way to catch something invisible was to make it show itself through forces it couldn't control, using chemistry that had been refined through generations of immigrant survival experience. The mathematical reality of anti-submarine warfare was brutal and undeniable. Mueller's U-boat could approach convoy targets from any direction using underwater routes that eliminated visual detection, while carrying 4 bow torpedo tubes loaded with G7A torpedoes capable of sinking any merchant vessel with direct hits that would come without warning because no Allied detection system had ever successfully tracked U-571's movements during combat operations. Lucky, trust this soap. Henry shouted as he worked frantically with the homemade Irish laundry soap that he'd brought aboard USS Blackwood as personal supplies, using techniques his grandmother had taught him for detecting oil leaks in basement pipes and revealing water contamination that conventional methods couldn't identify, because immigrant families couldn't afford professional detection services and had to solve problems using traditional knowledge and improvised chemistry. If stories of family cleaning traditions and unlikely naval victories move you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss similar stories of ordinary people using everyday knowledge to achieve extraordinary results during wartime. The soap that would change everything had been made by Irish immigrant women using techniques that had been passed down through 6 generations of McKenna matriarchs who understood that survival in urban boarding houses required the ability to detect problems that landlords tried to hide, and the knowledge to create cleaning solutions that revealed truth through chemical reactions that exposed what others wanted to conceal. The invisible German predator that haunted the North Atlantic had built its reputation through systematic evasion of Allied anti-submarine forces that had produced zero detection events during 18 months of convoy attacks, making Captain Lieutenant Wolfgang Mueller the most successful stealth commander in the European theater of operations and the personal nemesis of Allied convoy escorts throughout the Atlantic shipping routes who had never even glimpsed his submarine. Mueller was 29 years old, a career Kriegsmarine officer who had commanded U-boats since the 1940 Battle of France and had developed underwater techniques that maximized German advantages in acoustic stealth and hydrodynamic efficiency through silent running procedures that eliminated every sound signature that Allied sonar systems were designed to detect. Wolfgang had earned his naval commission through the prestigious German submarine school at Kiel and had studied under Captain Karl Donitz himself, learning that submarine warfare was about psychological terror as much as torpedo attacks. The German U-boat U-571 was a Type VIC submarine that represented the pinnacle of German underwater engineering, specifically designed for extended patrol operations in the North Atlantic where Allied convoy routes were most vulnerable to torpedo attacks. The vessel displaced 769 tons submerged, measured 220 feet in length, and could achieve 17 knot surface speed while maintaining complete acoustic silence during submerged approaches that brought German torpedoes within guaranteed kill range of merchant vessels. U-571 had been extensively modified with experimental Alberich acoustic dampening coating that absorbed Allied sonar pulses and reduced the submarine's acoustic signature to levels below natural ocean background noise, creating stealth capabilities that exceeded those of any other German submarine in service. The coating had been developed by German scientists using rubber compounds and steel mesh that created anechoic properties, making the submarine virtually invisible to Allied detection systems. Wolfgang Müller had earned his nickname, Ghost Walker, through his ability to penetrate Allied convoy formations without triggering a single sonar contact, using underwater currents and thermal layers as concealment while positioning his submarine for torpedo attacks that appeared to come from empty ocean because no Allied detection system had ever registered his presence during approach or attack phases of combat operations. Müller's submarine tactics were based on exploiting Allied weaknesses in sonar technology and detection doctrine, using natural ocean phenomena like thermal gradients and salinity layers to mask his submarine's acoustic signature while approaching targets through underwater routes that conventional anti-submarine doctrine considered impossible to navigate without detection. His crew had been specially trained in silent running procedures that eliminated every possible source of mechanical noise. The psychological impact of Müller's reputation was as devastating as his torpedo attacks, because Allied convoy personnel throughout the North Atlantic understood that the Ghost Walker could appear anywhere without warning, creating constant fear and tension that affected crew morale and tactical decision-making throughout the merchant marine and naval escort forces who had to operate in waters where an invisible enemy could strike at any moment. Müller's submarine had been modified with experimental acoustic dampening materials that absorbed sonar pulses and reduced engine noise to levels below the threshold of Allied detection equipment, creating a technological advantage that allowed U-571 to operate in heavily defended convoy routes where other German submarines were immediately detected and destroyed by Allied escort vessels equipped with advanced anti-submarine warfare systems. Convoy bearing 270, range 4,000 meters, Müller announced to his crew through the submarine's silent communication system as U-571 positioned itself beneath the Allied merchant ships for the coordinated torpedo attack that would sink 6 vessels before the escorts could locate his position, using tactics that had proven successful during 47 previous attacks that had never resulted in German detection or damage. Müller's combat record was unprecedented in German submarine warfare and had become the standard by which other U-boat commanders measured their effectiveness. 47 confirmed Allied merchant vessel kills totaling over 350,000 tons of shipping destroyed without ever being detected by Allied forces, creating a psychological weapon as devastating as his torpedo attacks because convoy crews throughout the North Atlantic understood that the Ghost Walker could appear anywhere without warning. The tactical advantage that Müller's submarine provided to German naval operations extended far beyond individual torpedo attacks, because the knowledge that an undetectable U-boat was operating in Allied shipping lanes created strategic uncertainty that forced convoy routes to be altered and escort resources to be concentrated in areas where Müller's submarine had never actually been present, multiplying the tactical impact through psychological warfare that affected Allied logistics throughout the Atlantic theater. But Müller had never faced an opponent like Henry McKenna, whose understanding of Irish cleaning chemistry and surface tension dynamics was about to prove that sometimes submarine warfare could be decided by civilian knowledge rather than military technology when traditional techniques were applied with scientific understanding and tactical innovation. The Boston sailor who understood bubbles had grown up in a family where cleaning wasn't just domestic work but a survival skill that sustained Irish immigrant communities through economic hardships that required creative solutions to problems that conventional approaches couldn't solve, because immigrant families couldn't afford professional services and had to develop traditional techniques that worked under the harsh conditions of urban poverty. Henry McKenna was 23 years old, the grandson of Irish immigrants who had arrived in Boston in 1898 during the massive wave of Irish immigration that followed the potato famine recovery period, and who had established a boarding house in South Shore that served longshoremen and factory workers who needed affordable housing during the economic uncertainty that characterized immigrant life in industrial America. Bridget McKenna had been born in County Cork in 1875 and had learned cleaning techniques from her mother, who had survived the potato famine by understanding how to create cleaning solutions from whatever materials were available, because Irish families during the famine years had to solve sanitation problems using traditional knowledge rather than manufactured products that were unavailable or unaffordable during periods of economic devastation. The McKenna family boarding house had become a center of Irish immigrant community life in Boston, where Bridget's cleaning expertise had earned a reputation throughout the neighborhood for her ability to maintain sanitary conditions that prevented the spread of disease during periods when overcrowding and poor sanitation created health hazards that killed thousands of immigrant families throughout American cities. Bridget McKenna had learned cleaning techniques from her mother in County Cork and had adapted traditional Irish soap-making methods to American conditions while developing enhanced formulations that could handle the industrial pollution and urban contamination that made Boston boarding house maintenance a constant battle against dirt and degradation that would have defeated cleaning methods designed for rural Irish conditions. Henry, boy, his grandmother had said while teaching him the secrets of her soap recipe that could detect oil contamination in water systems and reveal leaks that landlords tried to conceal from tenants who lacked the knowledge to identify building maintenance problems. Soap doesn't just clean things, it shows you what's really there. When you mix the right soap with water, it changes how liquids behave, and things that were hiding become visible because the chemistry forces them to reveal themselves. The specific soap that would expose U-571 had been formulated by Bridget McKenna using traditional Irish ingredients that created unique surface tension properties when mixed with seawater, producing chemical reactions that could detect hydrocarbon contamination at concentrations below what conventional detection methods could identify. The recipe included lye made from wood ash, tallow rendered from beef fat, and specific mineral salts that created the chemical properties necessary for detecting oil contamination in water. The soap-making process that Bridget had perfected required precise timing and temperature control that had been developed through generations of Irish women who understood that survival often depended on creating cleaning solutions that could reveal problems before they became life-threatening hazards in overcrowded urban environments where poor sanitation could spread disease throughout entire neighborhoods. Henry had learned these techniques through years of working alongside his grandmother during the daily operation of the boarding house, where maintaining sanitary conditions required constant vigilance and the ability to detect contamination before it could spread through the water systems that served dozens of immigrant families living in close quarters. Henry had enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1941 immediately after Pearl Harbor, despite having a civilian job at the Boston Navy Yard that would have kept him in essential war production work throughout the conflict, contributing to ship construction and repair operations that were considered crucial for American naval operations. But Henry couldn't stand the thought of Irish-American men dying while he stayed safely in Boston, even though his mechanical skills were desperately needed for ship construction and repair operations. The transition from civilian life to naval service had been challenging because military procedures emphasized standardized equipment and regulation cleaning methods rather than the improvised techniques and traditional knowledge that made Irish immigrant cleaning successful under conditions that defeated conventional approaches. Naval service had been challenging for Henry because military procedures emphasized standardized equipment and regulation cleaning methods rather than the improvised techniques and traditional knowledge that made Irish immigrant cleaning successful under conditions that defeated conventional approaches. McKenna, the ship's executive officer, had said after Henry's Irish soap had been used to detect a fuel leak that would have created a fire hazard during combat operations, his voice reflecting the amazement of a career naval officer who had never seen cleaning supplies used as detection equipment, "That soap of yours seems to find problems that our standard equipment misses. Keep it available for situations that require unconventional detection methods that naval regulations never anticipated." The respect that Henry's soap had earned among USS Blackwood's crew was based on its proven ability to detect contamination and leaks that conventional naval equipment couldn't identify, demonstrating that immigrant knowledge could complement modern military technology when properly applied by personnel who understood both traditional techniques and modern requirements. But the real test of Henry's cleaning wisdom would come when USS Blackwood was assigned to convoy escort duty in the North Atlantic, where German submarines had been systematically destroying Allied merchant shipping using stealth tactics that conventional anti-submarine warfare couldn't counter effectively. The deadly hunt that almost ended everything began when Allied naval intelligence received reports that Mueller's U-571 was operating in the convoy routes between Newfoundland and Britain, where German success could disrupt supply lines that were essential for supporting the upcoming invasion of Europe and threaten the entire Allied strategy for victory through sustained logistics operations that depended on maintaining reliable shipping lanes across the North Atlantic. USS Blackwood had been assigned to escort convoy HX-384, which included 18 merchant vessels carrying critical war materials including aviation fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, and the specialized equipment that would be needed for establishing Allied air bases in liberated European territories. The convoy represented months of American industrial production and accumulated resources that were irreplaceable within the timeframe necessary for supporting Allied operations. The tactical challenge facing Lieutenant Commander Robert Thompson aboard USS Blackwood was essentially hopeless according to conventional anti-submarine doctrine, because Mueller's U-boat could approach convoy targets using stealth techniques that rendered Allied sonar systems completely ineffective during underwater stalking operations, while the German submarine's torpedo attacks could sink multiple merchant vessels before defensive systems could locate and engage the attacker. Lieutenant Commander Thompson had fought German submarines throughout the North Atlantic campaign and understood that U-boat tactics were based on acoustic stealth and hydrodynamic efficiency that allowed smaller vessels to defeat larger opponents through technological advantages that eliminated Allied detection capabilities during critical approach phases when German torpedoes could be launched from point-blank range. The convoy formation that HX-384 was using had been designed to maximize defensive capabilities through overlapping escort coverage and coordinated anti-submarine tactics, but Mueller's U-571 had been specifically modified to defeat these defensive measures through stealth technology that rendered conventional escort procedures ineffective against a submarine that could approach targets without being detected by Allied sonar systems. Henry had been maintaining cleaning equipment in USS Blackwood's storage compartments when general quarters sounded and every man aboard the destroyer escort rushed to battle stations, transforming routine convoy duty into preparation for underwater warfare that could determine whether German raiders would reach Allied merchant shipping and destroy the materials necessary for continuing the war effort. McKenna, secure that cleaning gear and report to damage control. Chief Petty Officer Sullivan had shouted as Blackwood's crew prepared for anti-submarine operations against an enemy that could attack from any direction without providing warning or opportunity for defensive response, because Mueller's submarine had never been successfully detected during approach or attack phases of previous engagements. The weather conditions during the encounter were perfect for German submarine operations, with moderate seas that provided acoustic masking while maintaining sufficient visibility for periscope observation, creating tactical advantages that allowed U-boat commanders to approach convoy targets using environmental conditions that reduced Allied detection capabilities while maximizing German opportunities for successful torpedo attacks. But Henry had an idea that was either inspired or insane, depending on how well he understood the physics of surface tension and the chemical properties of Irish soap that had been designed to reveal contamination through molecular interactions that conventional detection methods couldn't achieve, because immigrant families had developed cleaning techniques that could identify problems that professional detection services couldn't afford to miss. The inspiration for Henry's bubble technique had come from his grandmother's stories about using soap to detect oil contamination in water supplies during the early days of Boston's industrial development, when conventional testing failed but properly applied soap could reveal hydrocarbon pollution through chemical reactions that made invisible contaminants visible to trained observers who understood the chemistry involved. If this soap can show oil leaks in a boarding house basement, Henry muttered to himself as he began preparing his grandmother's soap using techniques that no naval manual had ever described, maybe it can show diesel fuel leaks from a German submarine that thinks it's invisible but still has to deal with the same laws of chemistry that affect every other machine that burns petroleum products. The chemistry of Henry's plan was based on understanding how Irish soap created surface tension changes that revealed hydrocarbon contamination in seawater, because submarines leak trace amounts of diesel fuel and hydraulic fluid that could be detected through chemical analysis if the right detection medium was properly applied under conditions that allowed chemical reactions to occur naturally. The technique required precise timing and perfect understanding of ocean currents and wind patterns, because failure would waste precious detection opportunities while Mueller's U-boat continued its approach toward torpedo attack positions where German weapons could sink the entire merchant convoy before Allied escort vessels could mount effective defensive responses using conventional anti-submarine warfare methods. But success would create the tactical intelligence necessary for USS Blackwood to locate and engage Mueller's submarine with depth charges while the German boat was still maneuvering for attack position, reversing the tactical advantage and allowing Allied anti-submarine weapons to achieve decisive results against a target that had never been successfully engaged during 18 months of combat operations. The moment that changed everything came at 1,347 hours when Henry deployed his grandmother's Irish soap in a systematic pattern across USS Blackwood's patrol area, creating chemical conditions that would reveal diesel fuel contamination if Mueller's U-boat was operating in the vicinity, because even the most sophisticated German stealth technology couldn't eliminate the basic laws of chemistry that governed how petroleum products behaved when mixed with seawater and exposed to surface tension. Modifying agents. Holy Mary, would you look at that? Chief Sullivan shouted as Henry's soap created distinctive bubble patterns on the ocean surface that revealed trace hydrocarbon contamination in locations where no submarine had been detected by conventional sonar systems or visual observation methods, demonstrating that traditional Irish cleaning chemistry could achieve detection results that modern naval technology had failed to accomplish. The Irish soap that McKenna had formulated using 6 generations of cleaning knowledge reacted with diesel fuel residue from Mueller's U-boat and created surface tension changes that produced visible bubble formations indicating the precise location of the German submarine's underwater approach route, because the chemical properties of traditional Irish soap were specifically designed to reveal hydrocarbon contamination through reactions that made invisible pollutants visible to trained observers. The chemical reaction that exposed Mueller's submarine was based on the interaction between Irish soap surfactant properties and the diesel fuel that U-571 was leaking from engine seals and hydraulic systems, creating bubble formations that followed the submarine's underwater track and revealed its exact position to Allied observers who understood how to interpret the chemical evidence. Contact bearing 045, range 800 yards. Henry reported as his soap revealed the chemical signature of U-571's diesel engines and hydraulic systems, providing the first positive identification of Mueller's submarine location during 18 months of successful stealth operations, because traditional Irish cleaning knowledge had achieved what sophisticated Allied detection systems had failed to accomplish. The bubble pattern that Henry's soap created on the ocean surface was distinctive and unmistakable, forming spiral configurations that followed the underwater current disturbances created by Mueller's submarine while indicating the concentration of diesel fuel contamination that revealed not only the German boat's location but also its direction of travel and approximate depth based on the chemical concentration gradients. Mueller himself was experiencing his first detection event in 18 months of successful operations, struggling to understand how Allied forces had located his submarine using methods that German acoustic stealth technology had been specifically designed to defeat, because no German submarine commander had ever encountered detection techniques based on chemical analysis rather than acoustic or visual observation. Achtung! We have been detected by unknown methods. Mueller's sonar operator reported as USS Blackwood began maneuvering for depth charge attacks against a target that had never been successfully located by Allied anti-submarine forces during the entire war, creating confusion and panic among German crew members who had believed their submarine was undetectable by any Allied technology. The psychological impact on Mueller's crew was devastating because their confidence in German stealth technology had been shattered by detection methods that no German training had prepared them to counter or understand, demonstrating that Allied forces had developed capabilities that exceeded German technological assumptions about the limitations of enemy anti-submarine warfare systems. But Henry's cleaning technique had done more than detect one German submarine. It had created the tactical opportunity for USS Blackwood to engage Mueller's U-boat with depth charge attacks while the German vessel was still approaching through underwater routes that no Allied detection system had ever penetrated, reversing the tactical initiative and allowing Allied anti-submarine weapons to achieve coordinated attacks against a previously invulnerable target. Have any of your family cleaning secrets ever revealed hidden problems that conventional methods missed? Share your stories in the comments below. I read every single one and would love to hear how traditional knowledge helped solve modern detection challenges that professional equipment couldn't handle. The depth charge attack that followed was swift, precise, and devastating for Mueller's submarine, because USS Blackwood could target the exact location of U-571 using chemical intelligence that provided more accurate positioning data than conventional sonar systems had ever achieved against German stealth technology. USS Blackwood's anti-submarine weapons detonated in systematic patterns around U-571's position, creating underwater shock waves that damaged German hull integrity and forced Mueller to surface his submarine in broad daylight while surrounded by Allied escort vessels. All stop. Emergency surface. Mueller commanded as his crew attempted to control flooding and mechanical damage caused by depth charge explosions that had found their target through detection methods that no German submarine commander had ever encountered, because traditional Irish cleaning chemistry had provided tactical intelligence that German stealth technology had been unable to conceal. The accuracy of the depth charge attack was unprecedented in Allied anti-submarine operations, because Henry's soap had provided precise location data that allowed USS Blackwood to place explosive charges within lethal range of Mueller's submarine on the first attack run, eliminating the trial-and-error process that typically characterized anti-submarine warfare against fast-moving underwater targets. The Battle of the Irish Bubbles, as it would later be called in U.S. Navy records, resulted in the capture of U-571 and its crew, marking the first time in 18 months that Mueller's submarine had been detected and the first successful engagement against the most elusive U-boat in the German fleet, demonstrating that traditional knowledge could complement modern military technology when properly applied by personnel who understood both civilian techniques and naval requirements. Mueller himself was pulled from the North Atlantic after abandoning his damaged submarine, becoming a prisoner of war who provided valuable intelligence about German stealth technology while struggling to understand how Irish soap had defeated 18 months of successful acoustic camouflage that had been developed by Germany's most advanced naval engineers using the latest scientific principles of underwater acoustics and materials science. McKenna, Lieutenant Commander Thompson said during the post-battle assessment, his voice carrying the amazement of an experienced anti-submarine warfare officer who had witnessed something that challenged every assumption about detection technology and the relationship between traditional knowledge and modern naval science. "I've been fighting U-boats for 2 years, and I've never seen detection methods like what your soap accomplished. How do you explain finding the most elusive submarine in the German Navy using cleaning supplies that cost less than our sonar equipment?" Henry's answer became part of U.S. Navy tradition and established civilian expertise as a valuable complement to military technology that could provide solutions to tactical problems that conventional naval science had never anticipated. "Sir, my grandmother always said that Irish soap doesn't just clean things, it shows you what's really there." Mueller's boat was leaking diesel fuel like every other submarine, but nobody knew how to see it until we changed the chemistry of the water to make the contamination visible to anyone who understood what they were looking at. The tactical innovation that Henry had demonstrated was immediately studied by U.S. Navy engineers who analyzed how traditional Irish cleaning methods could be applied to anti-submarine warfare, leading to the development of chemical detection systems that incorporated immigrant knowledge with modern naval requirements for detecting submerged vessels through environmental analysis rather than acoustic or visual observation. Within 48 hours of Mueller's capture, U.S. Navy technical specialists were interviewing Henry about the specific chemistry principles behind Irish soap formulation, creating classified studies that examined how traditional cleaning techniques could be adapted for military applications against German submarine technology that had previously been considered undetectable by Allied forces. But the most significant impact was on German submarine operations throughout the remainder of the war, because Mueller's capture had demonstrated that Allied forces could neutralize German technological advantages through innovative applications of civilian knowledge that German submarine doctrine had never anticipated or prepared to counter during the development of stealth technology. Radio intercepts revealed that German Naval Command was reporting concerns about Allied chemical warfare capabilities, and requesting intelligence about U.S. Navy methods for detecting submarines through environmental analysis, indicating that the psychological impact of Henry's victory extended throughout German submarine operations and affected tactical planning for underwater warfare. The ripple effects of Henry's victory extended throughout U.S. Navy anti-submarine operations as other vessels began incorporating traditional cleaning techniques into their detection capabilities, proving that civilian expertise could enhance military effectiveness when properly integrated with conventional naval technology by personnel who understood both immigrant knowledge and modern tactical requirements. German submarine commanders throughout the Atlantic began reporting increased caution during approach operations due to concerns about Allied detection capabilities that exceeded German understanding of enemy anti-submarine technology, leading to reduced effectiveness of German wolf pack tactics that had depended on stealth approaches for successful torpedo attacks. The psychological impact on German submarine operations was immediate and significant, because Müller's defeat had proven that Allied forces could develop countermeasures to German technological advantages through creative applications of traditional knowledge rather than superior military equipment, challenging fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technology and tactical effectiveness in underwater warfare. The scientific explanation for Henry's success revealed the sophisticated chemistry principles that Irish immigrant women had developed through generations of urban survival experience, creating cleaning solutions that functioned as detection systems through chemical principles that modern naval science had never formally studied but proved highly effective when applied against military targets. Irish soap represents a form of traditional chemistry that incorporates surface tension manipulation principles that are superior to many modern detection methods, explained Professor Catherine O'Brien from Boston College during a post-war analysis of the incident that was classified to prevent enemy forces from learning about Allied capabilities for using immigrant knowledge in military applications. The surfactant properties developed by Irish cleaning traditions create chemical reactions that can detect hydrocarbon contamination at concentrations below the threshold of conventional testing equipment, making them effective against military targets that were designed to avoid detection by acoustic or visual methods but not chemical analysis. The post-war analysis of Henry's technique revealed that Irish immigrant cleaning represented a form of traditional chemistry that had never been formally studied by military engineers but proved highly effective when applied against modern submarine technology by personnel who understood both the traditional techniques and the tactical requirements of anti-submarine warfare. The human story that made it all meaningful was preserved in letters between Henry and his grandmother in Boston, documenting not just the technical details of Irish soap-making but the cultural traditions that had enabled an Irish-American sailor to defeat German submarine technology through understanding of chemistry that transcended formal naval education and demonstrated the value of immigrant knowledge in modern warfare. Grandmother, Henry wrote in a letter to Bridget McKenna after the U-boat capture, "Your soap caught a German submarine that the Navy couldn't find with all their fancy equipment." 6 generations of Irish knowledge proved stronger than German engineering, just like you always said it would when properly applied to problems that required understanding chemistry rather than just following regulations. Bridget McKenna's response revealed the connection between traditional knowledge and survival that had sustained Irish immigrant communities through generations of challenges that required innovative solutions to problems that conventional approaches couldn't solve. Henry, I told you that Irish soap shows you what's really there, whether it's oil in the basement pipes or diesel fuel from German submarines. The truth always rises to the surface when you know how to make it visible, and immigrant families have always understood that survival requires creating solutions that work better than what rich people can afford to buy. The post-war legacy of Henry's innovation extended far beyond anti-submarine warfare to influence how military forces incorporated civilian expertise into their operations, demonstrating that traditional knowledge could provide solutions to modern problems when applied by people who understood both the old techniques and the new challenges created by technological warfare. Henry McKenna proved that anti-submarine warfare could be influenced by factors that had nothing to do with modern technology when traditional knowledge was properly understood and applied by someone who respected the wisdom of immigrant communities while having the courage to use that wisdom in entirely new tactical situations. So here's the question Henry's story poses: when facing modern detection challenges that seem to require sophisticated technology, How do you recognize when traditional knowledge might provide simpler and more effective solutions? What family cleaning secrets do you carry that might prove unexpectedly valuable in situations that seem completely unrelated to domestic work? And how do you honor the wisdom of immigrant communities while having the courage to apply that wisdom in ways they never imagined? What family traditions or inherited knowledge do you think might prove valuable in unexpected ways? Leave your thoughts in the comments. These stories of traditional wisdom meeting modern challenges remind us that every family carries expertise that has been refined through generations of real-world testing, and that wisdom never truly becomes obsolete when properly understood and courageously applied.